Well, welcome to the Real Journeys of Success podcast. Yes, it's your host, Rob Elliott, back again with another awesome guest. And yet again, we've gone overseas onto the south coast of London, actually Sussex, which is, I've been told, an amazing place. I haven't got to be there. This lady is a female entrepreneur that is known all over Europe. She's a writer, she's an author, and she's a business person that is absolutely smashed goals everywhere. Welcome to the show, Jan Cavelle. How are you?
I'm okay, Rob. Thank you very, very much. How are you?
I'm really, really good. We're just coming out of our summer here and starting to get a little bit chilly, which is nothing like you guys over there in England. Our winter is nearly your summer, from what I'm told.
Yeah, well, we're still hoping for summer here. It's a very late one. Not a sign of it, mate, really.
So before you became an author and a writer and an entrepreneur, what part of England did you live?
Ironically, I lived in Sussex right at the beginning, or I was born in Sussex, and I haven't been here. I've only moved back here in about 3 years ago. So I didn't live here for sort of from my teens to now. But yeah, it's sort of full circle thing. I decided that I'd like to move back.
And did you live there with your family, or?
I did originally, yeah. I grew up with my family. I grew up on a farm,
Wow.
which I guess, for something to be said for farmers and entrepreneurship. It's still a small business in its own way. So you learn to be independent, and crises come first, and that sort of hard work ethic, and for all of which you need for a small business.
So what type of farm was it, Jan?
It was a dairy farm.
Okay.
Mainly, I mean, there was some arable, but it was predominantly a dairy farm.
So is that for milk or cheese or?
Just mainly milk, as I remember it. I mean, I'm being, at that age, I remember the cows more, because they all had names, and I had my favorite was Suki. And Suki I loved dearly, but I was always very upset by the whole process, because of course they had baby cows, and all the boys were sent away, and I didn't like that at all. It was horrible. There were these lovely calves and boys we weren't allowed to keep. But I mean, it was lovely, and it was all the usual stuff of having your own chickens and collecting the eggs, and huge vegetable gardens, and
a great way to grow up, they say.
Yeah, definitely. Gorgeous.
And so what were you like at school? Were you a good student, or did you hide down the back and spend some time outside the principal's office?
A bit of both, I guess. I mean, I was packed off to boarding school because in the end, my father got quite ill. So they dealt with, the whole problem. I was a late child anyway. And so off I went to boarding school.
Yep.
And I'd been very solitary on the farm and read a lot of, read a huge amount anyway, actually. And I'd read quite a lot of what for them was quite progressive literature, and unlike sort of other kids who might have had a TV hero, I was enwrapped by people like Martin Luther King, and just generally sort of quite out there stuff for an 11 or 12-year-old in Britain at that time. And so I tended to be fairly bolshy, but in more of a debating sort of way. I was very hot on principles and arguments and standing up for what I believed, which got me into a fair amount of trouble, I think.
Yes.
But studies were okay, but we weren't actually taught very much in academia, because in that generation, you were really expected to still get married and not cope for yourself in any way, just arrange for flowers prettily.
Yeah, I think things have changed a lot since then. But,
they have.
I think the today a lot of people have got to learn the balance between having a voice and standing up for what you be, and still being able to disagree with people rather than yell and swear and carry on just because someone has a different opinion of you.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And it took me a while, I think, because I'd been solitary. I didn't, and because it was very secular anyway, and it was a world that I didn't really understand in some ways, vis-a-vis sort of very privileged little girls who were being brought up to be married. And, I was more interested in waving a banner about something, I didn't.
Look, there is yin and yang required in the earth.
Definitely a little bit.
And I think that it doesn't matter. I have some friends who what we would call completely polar opposites of my political beliefs and political views. But without having people like that, the place would be unbalanced. And you need those people who are going to challenge the norm.
But it does take maturity to see that, I think. Now, and I'm sure I couldn't at 11 or 12.
No, look, I think we're all a little bit like that at the start with. But reading a little bit about you online and doing my stalking before interviewing you, it obviously helped you out later in life. So you talk about being an entrepreneur on the kitchen table, raising your kids. So first, what was the drive behind doing that, and what type of businesses were you running?
Well, I started off when I sort of left the posh school and viewed all my my peers is the word I'm looking for, and my peers all went off to look for suitable husbands, and I was sort of thinking, now what? And I didn't want to take a secretarial job if I could help it. And in fact, I mean, I did get sent to secretarial college briefly, and that was a far worse disaster from school. I think I lasted 3 weeks or something. But and secretarial jobs I was appalling at anyway. So I quickly devised, and I suppose it was slightly ahead of my time to some extent, but I devised the idea of working for myself, and I'm still only 18, 19, but I could see that might be a lot more fun than having some ghastly job and tucking my forelock to somebody who's typing I was doing badly. So I started doing small businesses and drifting in and out of jobs, doing jobs short term rather. And a lot of those were sales jobs necessarily, because you can pick up sort of short-term sales jobs, comparatively easily. Yeah. And so I gradually learned to sell, through trial and error and a little bit of teaching. Yeah. And that enabled me equally to do small businesses. I did all sorts of things, and I'd do them for maybe 6-9 months, save up some money and go off traveling and, enjoy the summer. It was a wonderful life, which you could do at that age. It was fantastic.
Well, but of course, I did get, I think, in those days.
Yeah. I know. I mean, and I look back on it. I mean, I one summer I hitched around Europe. I mean, on my own. I mean, how crazy is that? You wouldn't do it now.
But there must have been something different if you look back now about you and the other girls that accepted the secretary's job, that accepted that they're just going to get married, have kids, either look after the family. You're a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
You love to disrupt, is what we call. What was it, if you look back now, that made you different from the rest of the girls?
Books.
You wanted to be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, partly because I had very little sort of influences around, I think, when I was a child, because, hardly anybody had cars, comparatively so in those days. And, I went to school, but, otherwise I tended to be on my own, and I was ill quite a lot as well. And so my main occupation was reading, so I just took on enormous amounts of information and read about famous people and, through history and politics and all sorts of things.
Was there any one or two authors or subjects that you read about that influenced you more than others?
I mean, I was encouraged to read the classics by my mother very young, which, stood me in good stead, actually. But therefore, she started initially on sort of classics like, the Little Women series. And, of course, I loved Jo. I thought Jo was, if you know your Little Women, which you may not, you may have escaped for Little Women, but Jo is the odd one out who doesn't want to get married, who wanted to write, who couldn't see any problem with equality. And that's going back, a century ago, but she was an absolute hero of mine, age sort of 6 or 7. Yeah. And, and Huckleberry Finn and all sorts of those type of, a lot of American literature. I'm not quite sure why, but, and it seemed to me that systems needed bucking, I just got very combative about things needing to change from an early time. As I said, by the time I got to school, that got me fairly badly bullied to the point I ran away at one point, actually.
So what would have been your biggest success before you became a ambassador to Europe as an entrepreneur?
Oh goodness, that was much later on. That was when I did have the business, because I did eventually succumb and I got married to somebody, and I had 2 children, and it didn't work out at all. And so I found myself on my own, and with absolutely no money and nobody around to help, with these 2 small children who I desperately wanted and I loved dearly. But lacking in money, shall we say. I was on income support, in fact. I was that broke. And I wanted to find something to bring in the money, to make a future for us, to keep a roof over our heads at that stage. Let's not get overexcited about the future. But I wanted to do it working from home. Partly because I'd got a lot of experience in that, because particularly if I was telephone selling, it was, I said a lot of experience. If I have what experience I had was in that. And partly, and predominantly because I could do it and be with the children at the same time. So, it wasn't that I had a great passion to start a business. It wasn't that I had a great passion to start a particular business. It was that I had a great passion to bring in an income and be with the kids, which meant selling on the phone as far as I could see. And so off I went, and I got, I'd done some work in furniture, as it goes, with my ex-husband, but and I put a leaflet together, literally paid for out of the last balance of my credit card, left over from my marriage, and got on the phone, and again, in those days, you just, I had a phone fax, and that was how, you communicated, and I cold called till I was blue in the teeth.
So was there one of those, what type of products were you selling in the end?
Furniture. I tried various sort of home interest things, but furniture was the one that sold.
And how long did you sell that for?
Well, it grew. This is the one that took off because, it became, the sales in the air after a while became sufficiently successful that there was a supply chain problem. So the only answer to the supply chain was to gradually start doing bits myself. And over, a period of 6-7 years, that ended up being a factory unit. Awesome. And so we went on.
So cold calling over the phone, furniture, if you said that to most salespeople, they would say that would have to be one of the toughest gigs you can do. They can't touch it. They can't see you, especially in those days. But you were successful. What set you apart?
It did take some doing, I tell you, Rob, looking back on it, because you're right, they couldn't see it. And occasionally you'd get a tough one who said, and I remember there was one I particularly couldn't shift up in Glasgow. And they were going, you've got to come into the showroom, because I was selling to the trade and, the interior design trade, some of whom had shops, some didn't. And they said, you've got to come up, you've got to come in. I remember scraping my pennies together for a babysitter and a train ticket, train ticket, only to find that, at the end of it, that they were just playing power games. And we just wanted to see, and I was short of money for weeks after that. And it really, fired me up to think, I don't care what pressure they put on me. I am going to be able to sell this stuff without going there, because I can't afford it, And just once in a while I'd go out, and again, I had a really old, revoltingly gold-coloured estate car, bashed up to hell and back, and that I could fit a coffee table in the back of, and I'd have to park it miles from whoever I was seeing, because they could, I was clearly an impressively successful company, and they couldn't possibly see this damn thing. So I was, given to walking through all the town centres, lugging a coffee table, avoiding the connection between me and this monstrous old car.
It actually does bring back memories to a job that I did once, and I used to park the company car about a half a kilometre away so no one would see me walking. It was a bomb.
Yeah.
And I called it character building.
Yes, it was probably character and muscle building, but yes, absolutely.
So where did you, how long did you do that for? What did you end up doing after that?
Well, that went on a long while, and it became very successful for quite a long while. And then eventually I stayed in it too long. I made the mistake of staying in it too long and got into all sorts of problems with it and just burnt out and ended up splitting it up and selling off a brand and getting out. And that was, when was that? That was about 5 years ago. You know, I think I lost a lot of my way. It comes back to the why, I guess, you know, because I hadn't wanted or meant to grow a furniture business particularly. I mean, it didn't really do it for me. But, you know, providing for my kids did it for me.
Yeah.
But, you know, by the time they were big enough and gone and providing for themselves, the why was a bit gone.
The why was gone.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
My father said the same thing. We were in one business for 11 years.
Yeah.
He didn't realise he was stale until we left.
Yeah.
And then he looked back and he said, Rob, he said, we should have gone years ago.
Absolutely.
But at the time, we thought we were doing the right thing.
I know.
And it is a tough call for people who are in business, especially entrepreneurs and self-employed. It's your passion. And sometimes you don't realise when the why is starting to disappear.
I think that's really, really true. And it's something I preach about a lot because I'm really passionate about it. And I think people should consider a higher turnover of their businesses, you know. Nowadays, you know, we do burn out and get stale. And of course we do. We do, you know, we recognize it in jobs, we recognize it in relationships. Do, yeah. So why don't we recognize it in business ownership? It's crazy.
I think it's pride.
Yeah.
I read a good book about the universe will only have you in a job as long as you have something to learn or something to give. And when that's done, it's time for you to leave. But a business owner looks at it from a different point of view. It's their baby, it's their passion, especially entrepreneurs like you. And admitting that, it's time to put the baby out and go and find something else to do, it's as though some people may think that they've failed.
Yeah. And I do get that. And I think that's as much society's, you know, wrong interpretation of what entrepreneurship is about as much as anything, you know, because, you know, we should be excited about people who found businesses much more. The economy relies on clever people starting businesses. Well, and, you know.
Amazon, all those big businesses now all started out of nothing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, so where would we all be without them? You know, so there shouldn't be this, you know, unless you stay forever, you're a failure about it. It should be, worry how clever you are that you started it.
I met a venture capitalist a week ago, and he just, the figures he tells us about and the deals he puts together had, put this way, a lot of zeros. But he believes in multiple income streams. He doesn't believe in an entrepreneur or a business person only having one business. And if you have one business, you should have at least 9 income streams into that business, or have multiple businesses. He said, because that's the only way you keep yourself fresh.
I think that's probably very, very true. You know, but again, we're taught to obsessively focus, you know, but there's a lot of bad advice out there, let's face it. But yeah, no, I think that's very true. And I certainly would myself diversify, go shorter term, you know, all of those things if I had my time all over again.
So where did the ambassador to Europe as a female entrepreneur come from?
That was amazing. I mean, I was very, very privileged to do that. I was asked to apply through some speaking work I'd been doing because I, you know, sort of to encourage other people to tell my story, you know, that sort of game. And somebody passed my name down the line to a government scheme that was promoting enterprise in Europe, working for other European countries and liaising with their groups and getting people to be much more aware of entrepreneurship in general, which, I mean, this is, I'm trying to think when it would have been, it's a fair time ago. So, you know, people were still moderately new to the idea and they didn't think it was open to them. So anyway, I got interviewed and all the caboodle, and I was very lucky to be one of the first 50 women chosen to do this for the UK, which was a huge honour. And we went to the European Parliament for it and various fascinating things, which little me would never have done otherwise. I mean, it's a hell of a leap from a farm in Sussex and a girls' boarding school,
Yeah.
So hugely lucky, and fascinating talking to women from the other countries and different challenges. And as well, we worked at home and went out to universities and business groups and, did mock up, sort of Dragon's Den type things and all those sort of scenarios for anything that would get people to start thinking this was an option. And think about it realistically too.
So what's when you've been around the world, you've been an ambassador for entrepreneurship, you've started multiple companies and businesses. A lot have been successful, not everything has. You've done it tough, but you've come through the other end now. If a young lady walked up to you in her 20s who wants to be an entrepreneur, wants to chart her own path in life, what would you say to her? What were some of the traps that you need to be looking out for today, considering now, with fingers crossed, we're coming out of COVID when the world has changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot of women are held back by lack of tech knowledge, and I think that's really vital in this day and age, because the tech knowledge is changing so fast. You can't have time to be afraid of it.
No.
But I think luckily women in their 20s probably aren't as bad, but I think they're still behind the men on the whole, unfortunately, in most cases. I think it's a lot about finding a good enough reason that you want to do it that drives you. Money's not it. It may be a part of what it buys for you, but you've got to have something so compelling that's getting you out of bed in the mornings. And, that's what's going to see you through. And a bit of grit. I wouldn't necessarily advise you to do it, but my way, I took too many risks and made too many mistakes. I remember being selected for another entrepreneurial campaign for one of the local universities where we were encouraging people. And a lot of your local business people were interviewed, or entrepreneurs were interviewed, and at the end of it, the people who were chosen were held back, and they said, well, one of the things we'll tell you is why we selected you. And I happened to be sort of last on this circle, and I was listening to well, we thought you were brilliant at this, and your social media is so superb and you can set an example about this. And they got to me and they said, well, we think you're the biggest risk taker we've ever come across.
That's awesome. That's a great compliment.
Well, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Wasn't quite what I expected, but yeah.
No. It's but you know what? If someone's willing to back themselves and take the risk, they're normally the ones that learn the most. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's certainly what I had to do. I had to learn on the hoof. But you can do that. I don't think books they might help, and I think they do help, but I don't think anything quite delivers the full experience of what it's involved in doing and running and setting up a business. It's
so unique. If you look back at it now from today and you're walking back down outside one of the pubs in Sussex and you run into your 20-year-old self, and it's before you've gone into the pub, not after. and the 20-year-old self doesn't know you, but just looks up to you and says, Jan, I met you at school one day. What advice would you give me? Because I've just finished now. What would you tell yourself?
Not to waste time worrying what other people think.
Love it.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think we've all made that mistake.
Yeah.
So you're now a writer, author, and you've published a book?
I have.
Where did all this come from and what's the book about?
Well, it locked in my childhood bedroom with my books. I, almost inevitably developed a childhood dream of being a writer, which businesses slightly, sent me off track. But there was a moment, I think, when I was losing my why, and I saw an ad for a digital publication called Real Business, advertising for entrepreneurs who'd like to contribute a regular column.
Yep.
And I thought, could I do that? Wow. And, just one of those things. I sent off a lucky punt and the editor liked what I wrote and wrote a couple of samples. And so I'd ended up writing for them or sort of every couple of weeks for about 8 or 9 years. So, really getting a feel, and they were wonderful. And I'm hugely full of praise for my editors there, because they taught me a lot and they gave me confidence to write. And I think, writing articles is a great way to learn to write, actually.
Yeah.
But so when finally I decided, business is enough, I'm getting a bit old and a bit sort of knackered, really, basically, and I need more time. That took about a month of a lot of sleep, and then I started to think, now what? And it kept on coming back to this idea of, you always had this dream of writing. And it wouldn't go away. So I thought, what can I write about? Have I got the imagination to do fiction, and have I got the confidence to write at all? And eventually I thought, hold on. I think the one thing I do know a lot about is this problem that people have when they're starting to scale. There are lots of things. So many companies get stuck at the scaling stage.
Yes.
For one reason or another. Too many sales, too little sales, no systems. You can list them all, I'm sure. But and they end up damn miserable because of it. And they slide back, or they don't get anywhere, or they give up, or whatever. Or they just stay there bashing their head against a brick wall and way past the sort of 10-year mark, like we say.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's give it a go. Let's write a book about this particular problem and see if we can offer some help and guidance to people in how to get around it. And that's what I decided to do.
Yep.
And I've been very lucky. I got some help from amazing entrepreneurs across the globe, and I got a contract from Bloomsbury, which kept me dancing for days. And so here I am, and it's launched in the UK, and we'll be launching over with you guys in Australia and also America at the beginning of July.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So you've been an entrepreneur ambassador. You've launched companies off the kitchen table. You've had a few jobs. You've sold the unsellable. You've now written a book. What's next?
I know. That's a big question. And if anybody's got any suggestions, do email me. I don't know. It's one I'm trying to work through at the moment. I don't think I can give up writing. I'd love to do another book. Awesome. And, so that certainly will be a major part of it.
So if I ran into you in London and said, Jan, I've got a dinner booking down the road and we've got a couple of free seats, and you can invite anyone in the world, alive or dead, who would you bring for dinner and why?
Interesting. I think I would start with Elon Musk, because I find him extraordinary.
Yeah.
He is just so unique. Probably, if we're going to try to stick on that basis, let's chuck in Steve Jobs, because again, very unique, very special brain, very inspirational.
Yeah.
And then probably somebody less obvious, which I sort of tend to come back to. I'm very fond of, as a sort of, again, a lifetime hero, is Paul Newman, the actor, because I think he did so much good. He was such an unsung hero.
Yeah.
I loved the way he lived his life, with the fact he did so many courageous things really quite late in life, from the Monte Carlo, not the Monte Carlo, the Le Mans Rally and things like that, sort of crazy stuff. And he did so much good for charities with his success. and yet is less known for it, and he changed lives beyond all belief, and he's an unsung hero, I think.
So people, this podcast does go around the world. If people wanted to get in touch with you, buy your book, read about what you do and how you do, especially young ladies who want to be entrepreneurs, how do they find Jan? I mean, we can't all get up on a plane and go to Sussex. Where's Jan, the entrepreneur that builds companies off the dining room table? So how do they get in touch with you?
Well, I would love them to come to my website, which is www.jancavelle.co.uk.
Yep.
And there's an email there they can get in touch with me. And if they want to bounce straight on there now, they can download a first chapter or so of the book.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody who's listening.
Jan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to actually read the whole book once it's out in Australia so I can order it here.
Thank you, Rob.
You take care. You keep inspiring female entrepreneurs around the world.
Thank you.
And I look forward to when you open your next big business and become the toast of the UK.
Thank you very much indeed.
No worries. And as we say on the Real Journeys of Success, have a groovy day.
Yeah, and you.